I am touched and honored and humbled tonight to share this illustrious stage with Margarita Reyes. Thank you, Margarita. Thank you for coming and encouraging what you do and what you're about to share with us. The title of your presentation tonight is Grassroots Veteran Suicide Prevention in the U.S. and Mexico. So obviously we have some difficult things to unpack tonight. And again, I want to thank you for coming here. But just to give a little bit of a background, could you talk about growing up in Southern California as a kind of a biographical narrative, and then also your family's particular attachment to the armed services and things like that?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be in this space and to be able to share with you about something that's really close to me. So I actually grew up kind of all over Southern California. People usually ask me, were you a military brat? And I said, no, we were just poor. But we did move around a lot, and raised by a single mom, 6 kids. Mom worked at McDonald's, and she was able to support us. My oldest brother went into the Marines when he turned 18, and he has been career military. But my oldest brother has been in he's been in the Marines, Air Force, Army, and he's currently deployed right now. So that just happened a few days ago. It's kind of fresh. And then my youngest brother, Elias, he joined the military when he was 17. He actually joined a little bit early. But, you know, growing up, we kind of grew up all over the place, all over San Diego County, Escondido, Temecula, Riverside, sort of all over. And, you know, home was really just where our family was. So it really didn't matter that we were moving so much as long as we were all together. And so, so we were very close. We're still very close. Yeah.
So in terms of enlistment, was that like the thing to do, or were there options growing up, or like how much of your family enlisted in the armed services?
Yeah, my oldest brother, I actually had a chance to interview my oldest brother about why he chose to join the military. And it was a project I did for school. I think I was at Santa Monica College at that point. And I asked him, I said, why did you want to join? And he said, I wanted to give back to the country that gave me so much, gave us so much. And so that, for my oldest brother, that's what it was. For my youngest brother, since he was really little, since he was like 4 years old, he idolized my oldest brother. And he would follow him around and kind of do things that he did. And I still remember, you know, my little junior running around, you know, kind of shadowing my oldest brother, who at that point was, you know, a Marine, so he really looked up to him. And what really was the catalyst for my youngest brother joining was 9/11. I remember sitting there watching as the planes hit, and I remember thinking, things aren't going to be the same. I already knew, you know, my oldest brother was in it, and he was telling us, you know, something's going to happen. And at that point, Elias, he had already, it's almost like he knew that he was destined to be, this is who he was. And so as soon as he could, he joined the Marines at 17. And he deployed twice to Iraq, and the last time to Afghanistan.
Yeah, could you talk about his deployments a little bit? It's my understanding that his platoon was hit harder than others, and
yes,
if you want to.
Yeah, he served in Second Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, and if you know about the time in Iraq and Afghanistan between 2004 and 2008, that's when my brother served, you know that they were basically left out there without the support that they really needed. They had firefights practically every day, and little to no air support, supplies. They would run out of bullets. They were spread very thin. If you talk to anyone from 2-7, they'll tell you. And so they really relied on each other to stay alive. And I think those bonds are so strong from that time. And I see those strong bonds with most veterans that serve in combat, from my experience. And, you know, I come across people from 2-7 and I tell them, you know, who I am, who my brother was, and I'm an immediate family member. But that time for the family was really trying not to worry while he was gone, trying to stay strong for him so that he wouldn't like worry about us. Because even though he wasn't telling us what they were going through, losing so many in combat as well, it just, he was a really strong person, and he didn't want to share a lot of what happened because he didn't want to burden us, he thought. Looking back, I understand why he wouldn't tell us certain things, and some of the really difficult things that they went through, losing their brothers, and it just he came back different. He left a young man, you know, joking and laughing and just being, you know, a young person. And he came back, and that sparkle in his eyes was gone. That sense of wonder, that innocence was gone. And so he became a man in a matter of seconds. That's the only way that I can really describe it. And I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of like homecoming and the transition and brotherhood and things like this, what was the sense of the 2-7 family compared to the sense of family you had growing up? Were they the same, or is that like a continuation of your SoCal experience?
A little bit different.
Yeah.
You know, when my mom, you know, she was raised on a ranch in Mexico, very rural, where we sort of were brought up very, you know, we didn't have much, so we really appreciated just each other. And, you know, the few things that we had, you really, you know, it's because you don't really know, okay, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you don't know, like, you're missing this or you're missing that. You're happy with what you have. And so for us, it was always like, you know, we're lucky that we're together, you know? And so my mom, you know, she raised us in the church, very tight-knit, very much, you know, participating in a lot of things with her church. And when we lost him, it was like a part of our lives sort of just disappeared. And I say that with like everything that we knew, it just kind of like, you know, people disappeared, you know, friends that we thought were our friends kind of didn't know how to react to what was happening. And but what we found out was that our 2-7 family just swept in and picked us up and held us up. And that's why I'm so grateful, and that's why I'm here talking to you. Yeah. I know it's like, don't worry, I'll dry these tears.
There's sponges for that now.
But it was that caring and that immense love that we got from people that we didn't know, but they served with our brother, who loved him, who then took us in and really just helped us, because during that time we couldn't afford the funeral. And so they actually did a fundraiser, helped us with the funeral, and then it was, I always say I gained like 200, 300, 400 brothers. So, and that's why I'm here, because we don't want to lose any more brothers or sisters.
Of course, of course. So let's talk about kind of that transition from immense grieving, like the worst grieving, right, into your role establishing grassroots suicide prevention efforts, and then kind of maybe give that context. Like I think most people assume that the VA is handling that, things like this, but you discovered quite quickly that that was not the case, and so you forged a community, basically, right? Can you talk about that process a little bit?
Yes. So we found out very early on that he didn't have like death benefits. I think he was only he could only get like $200 towards a funeral, and my mom wanted to try and go through the VA and do that whole system, but we actually came upon some of the red tape that happens, and it was going to take a while just to get $200. And so we thought, oh, Mom, we'll just give you the $200, and we'll with everybody fundraising, we were able to figure it out. And then they also did a lot of the organizing, getting a lot of our Marines together, organize them to fly into the funeral. And so I kind of learned from them. I learned from them so that when we lost another Marine, all of us, even like my siblings, everyone, we just wanted to come in and help the family, and we wanted to take care of them just like we had been taken care of. And it just happened every time we kept losing someone else and someone else. And so we have this network of a lot of not just veterans, but they're family members of those that have, left us. And so now we're this big community of people who are just trying to save lives and not lose any more. Because what I started feeling every time we lost someone, it's like as if I lost my brother again every single time. Because I just was mentioning it to my husband today. I feel for sisters or brothers. I know that immense hole of losing somebody that's so amazing. Most of them are amazing. All of them are amazing. So much to give to this world. My brother wanted to be a doctor. He was pre-med. And he wanted to give back to the community. And so that was another reason why I also was like, he wanted to help people. So I said, I'm gonna try to help people that you would have helped. So a lot of the work that I do is in his honor and his memory, but also I've gotten close with a lot of our Marines. And so recently, the last few months, because of everything that was happening in Afghanistan, we lost a corpsman back in August, and he was helping one of his interpreters try to come to the States and get, a visa and all of that, and they ran across a lot of red tape. And so the last time I communicated with him, he had told me that he had a really hard time with what he was trying to help his interpreter, go through that red tape. And it was overwhelming for him. And then one day he took his life. And so in response to that, a lot of us grouped together to help his interpreter. And so there was a big group of us from all over the country, different people doing advocacy letters. Some people were on the ground trying to organize, hey, how can we get Dr. J, we'll call him, and his family to safety. And there were so many people working to try and continue Michael's mission. And in response to that, a Gold Star father that I know, Michael Washington, his son was killed in action during the time when my brother was serving. But he, myself, and another Navy corpsman, Richard Hayden, we started a monthly sort of check-in with 2-7 veterans. And so we started that last year in response to losing Michael. And we took a little break for a few months, and then we're starting back up again. But here's the thing, even though I'm doing a lot of this work, if you think about it in a different way, there's a bunch of me's kind of all over. Some are more vocal, some are less vocal. And so many of us are trying to come up with different ways to advocate, to educate, to change what's happening, and also to, I mean, the statistic is 22 veterans a day take their lives. And a lot of, if you look at the actual number 22, you've got a lot of veterans who are seniors that are taking their lives, and that they're in that 22. And you've got a lot of veterans that are Iraq and Afghanistan veterans in there. So you have these two different groups that are taking their lives. And why? Why? So that's what we're trying to change. And obviously not talking about it is making it worse. So we need to have these conversations. And everything that I'm doing, I try to learn as much as possible about, like, for example, like brain injuries, right? And how they affect our veterans, and also looking into different therapies that can be helpful, right? And so I've connected with different groups, like there's a group called My Veteran Passion out of Arizona. It's MVP in Arizona. And they actually utilize gaming to connect with their vets and to stay connected and provide mental health resources, and also the sense of community that is, you know, it's very much needed in these spaces. And then I've connected also, I've done some work with emerging vets and players who are now in, I think, 7 different locations across the country. And so they connect former professional athletes and combat veterans. And they've also recently just opened up their sessions to active duty, which is amazing because there are a lot of active duty suicides as well that a lot of people don't know about. I was talking to a Marine, an active duty Marine recently, and he said that in one of our bases they had like 12 suicides over the holiday weekend. These are things we don't hear about. And so I think the more we have these conversations and talk about it, I think that's what we have to do. And it's tough, and I know I'm sitting here crying, but the alternative for me is not an option. So I'm gonna look like this right now, but I need to have these conversations because, you know, sometimes I think about how much we invest in our vets, you know, the training, the time commitment, and our veterans are like, this is who you want, integrating back in society to make our communities better, because our veterans want to be of service. So how come we're not allowing them to be of service once they're back out? I feel like there's a huge disconnect between what the masses think and what the reality is. Hire our veterans. The skills that they have, you know, you hire a veteran, you could be saving their lives, because maybe every other person has turned them down for a job because of whatever XYZ they think, a preconceived notion. But if you look at their resumes, I have looked at some of these resumes like, wow, you did this? You coordinated this entire, whatever it was. And those skills, we need those skills here. And there's other organizations that are doing really amazing work, like Team Rubicon. Team Rubicon was founded by 2-7 veterans, and they are veterans, first responders, and anyone else who wants to volunteer as well. And they deploy to disaster zones. And this is all done. It's now like a nonprofit. They're doing amazing work throughout not just the country, but the world. We have Growing Veterans, which is up in Washington, and they utilize farming to heal. And that one is also co-founded by a 2-7 veteran. My Veteran Passion, the one I just mentioned, where they utilize gaming, another 2-7 veteran. And so our people are creating these spaces to heal each other. And so I want more people to know about this because a lot of times, like we're talking about grassroots, right? So we're doing this, we're not doing this because we're doing this out of our own time. It's not something that I ever want to make money off of. But I want people to know what's out there so that if you guys see these organizations, donate. Please donate. Please volunteer. Please share that they exist because, I think the more that we educate each other and also participate, go out there and volunteer with our vets. See how awesome they are. They really are. Did I answer your question?
Oh, yeah. And to give a bit of context, how many of the 2-7 family was killed in action as opposed to have been lost by suicide?
I've seen different numbers. The last number I saw was 51 suicides, but that may be higher because some of our vets sort of disappear sometimes. They isolate. And that's the worst thing that you could do is isolate. Please don't let your veterans isolate. If you see like your family member who's not coming out of their room for 2-3 days, they might be upset with you at first, but please don't leave them alone. Listen to them, don't judge them, just listen. Because a lot of times it's just a matter of, let's how are you feeling? How's it going? Anything I can help with? Oh, you're looking for a job? Oh, your resume's not, it's not up to what they want? Let me help you. Let me help you, revise your resume. Even things like that, huge, go a long way because a lot of times we kind of think most vets that I know are like, no, I'll do it. I got it, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna suck it up, right? But the thing is, we need each other. We need to help each other. And I know that there's been such situations where I've helped people just with a resume and then they get a job. That is the most amazing feeling because now they have work. Where before it was like, oh, you can't. But I was in a war zone. I did all of these things. How can you not give me a job doing a fraction of what I was doing? I mean, there really needs to be more education too for the public, for business owners. Hey, hire more vets, You
briefly kind of mentioned cognitive dissonance. I'd like to segue to an extension of your work. You work with deported veterans, and I think for most Americans, even that phrasing causes cognitive dissonance. But can you talk about this phenomenon of deported veterans, and then also how did you connect to that community through your 2-7 efforts?
I actually found out about veterans being deported back in, I think it was 2009. I was working on a documentary back then, and it was my first documentary that I I sort of did by myself, kind of learned how to do a lot of these things, and learned like how to edit, how to shoot, how to all these things. And so I found out that we were deporting our veterans. I couldn't believe it. And then I learned more, and I learned that there's certain laws that were passed back in, I think, the late 90s.
Yeah. I'll just read the quick Wikipedia version. So the late 90s, Clinton era, there was a law passed that if you are not a U.S. citizen, you are subject to automatic deportation after committing a certain kind of crimes after you've served your sentence. So a veteran can get in a bar fight, that's a felony. They're incarcerated in this country for that crime, and then after that, they're deported. And in the process of deportation, that can add another 1 to 2 years, just based on this kind of systems integration. So. And then
when you're deported, you're also banned from the country. So you're banned from the country for a certain amount of time. The thing is, what was happening and what I learned was that the veterans that were being deported, once they came out of active duty. There were different issues that they had. Some could be mental health issues, could be physical, whatever it is. And instead of being treated for what they needed to be treated, sometimes they would get in trouble, get into fights. I think somebody got deported because they wrote like bad checks. But I think it was like a few $1,000s. It was something like that, where you didn't, if that person had support in a different way, maybe they wouldn't have had to felt that they had to do that. And so, so when I found out that we had deported veterans, I actually went down there. After my
down to
Tijuana, because there is a deported veterans support house in Tijuana. So that's just south of San Diego in Mexico. And the way I met Hector Barajas, who was a deported veteran back then, we connected when I was doing that documentary. I included them in the documentary, and then I kept in touch. But when we lost my brother, he contacted me and he wanted to do a memorial, like a binational memorial on both sides, in the Mexico side and the U.S. side, and I just thought it was such a kind gesture for someone who was barely able to even have food because he didn't get any of his benefits. He couldn't get his benefits. He was in Mexico. Even just being able to get health care, or like through the VA and things like that. So I connected with them, and then I found out that there were thousands and thousands of veterans that were deported. The last number was, I think like 18,000, something like that, maybe higher. And so with Hector, I kept in touch with him. I supported a lot of the things that they were doing. Like personally, I would donate, and I would, and then I would take supplies down there, things like that. I remember I took a bunch of furniture down there, and it just I couldn't believe it. Like I took my daughter with me down there, and when we first met him, they were in this one-room studio, and there were like I think four vets there, and then like more would trickle in, and I would talk to them, and I thought, wow, you served 20 years ago, you got deported 10 years ago, and it just made me really sad that people who served this country and were willing to give their lives for all of us were sort of discarded. And so I remember having these conversations with Hector, where he would get discouraged, and Hector was actually pardoned by the governor a few years ago. I think it was like 3 years ago or something like that. And so he was able to come back, and now he's a citizen. And he's still continuing to give back to to the community, to veterans, and trying to help other veterans try to come back to the States and sort of fix their legal issues so that they're able to then apply to come back. And so there has been a push for that to bring our veterans back. And it's not just Mexico, it's all over the world we have deported veterans. So I highly encourage people to look into that and learn more about it, because it shouldn't be happening, you know?
Have you ever felt at personal risk, kind of seeing all these people who are really going through certain kinds of psychosis, if you will? How do you kind of balance that with being a mother? And feel free to not answer any of these questions unless you would like to, but.
Yeah, no, it's, I tend to really dive into things when I'm, passionate about something, and this is definitely something that is very close to me, and so I tend to give a lot, and so I learned, early on after my brother's death that I could only carry so much, and so I'm not a mental health professional, but what I learned was that, hey, I know mental health professionals, so let's start doing some connecting. But at first, I became overwhelmed. There was a point during that time after my brother passed away where one day I was talking to two suicidal vets, and they're still with us. They're still with us. But it was just this feeling of like helplessness that I couldn't do more, and really realizing that I don't have to do it by myself. There are groups out there that we could reach out to, and I think a really great example of that is like Merging Vets and Players, MVP. They have the support systems in place. But when I first started doing this, it was really hard for me, to the point where I became depressed, because I wanted to do more and I couldn't. And then there was, obviously the loss of my brother, and then continuing to lose our vets. That was hard. But then I kept thinking, what about them? They keep losing their brothers. And of course, there are also women that are taking their lives, women veterans that are taking their lives, who are also, there's just a whole slew of things that we really need to be focusing on. And for me, I definitely needed to get some mental health support as well. So that balancing that was hard at first, and I still struggle with it. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is not something that, it's hard for me to do, but like I said earlier, I have to do it. I have to. It's almost like I feel like my brother's standing right next to me, kind of holding me up too sometimes, because, sort of thinking about the immense amount of pain that our vets are going through, that's overwhelming for me too, because I want to take care. I want to nurture. I want you to be okay. The reality is that obviously life is you're not okay all the time. But my thing is we love you. Don't leave us. You're important. You belong here. And we love you. Don't leave us. That's what I would tell my brother, if I had the chance to. Did I answer that one?
I think so. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yeah.
Now we'll get to the Triumph Upward March. Bugle's playing part of the presentation.
Okay.
So yeah, talk about the marches and the 2-7 and when you were blessed to hold the flag and things like that.
Oh yes, about
this,
3 years.
This image, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, can you describe this moment? What's happening and then what led to it?
That was Memorial Day. It was about 3 years ago, and I am. Actually, he served with my brother, and so I was really proud to just stand next to him. I've never held the flag before. But that day, Denver Morris, who had organized this march with emerging vets and players, we marched from the pier in Santa Monica to the Westwood Veterans Cemetery, and I proudly carried that flag because it means something else to me. It's the love, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the pain, the happiness, the anguish, the years of worrying about our brother there, but also the being proud of him because he was a badass. Can I say that? It's the internet,
you just
right?
Did.
And so I had all of these emotions as I held that flag. And for me, those flags mean something completely, it's so special to me. It doesn't mean, it's much more than like just a piece of cloth or an ideal. It's much more to me than that. And so I proudly carried it because I also truly believe that we need to fight for our veterans. As civilians, we need to fight for them, to take care of them.
Oh, and that segs delightfully into the next phase of your incredible life. So you started to use all your actor and filmmaking prowesses to kind of, how would you describe it? I'm gonna put, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. What comes next?
Yes, what comes next? Is it Unvisible? So Unvisible is a short film. Okay, so
we're gonna see
yes,
a
let's
bit
watch
of it now, or the trailer. Okay.
Yeah, let's watch it.
I've been keeping an eye on Dylan lately. I saw him drawing in his notebook the other day.
Whoop, did it stop? Okay.
No.
Well, the full trailer is online. You can find it on YouTube. And you were asking, what's 2-7? 2-7 is the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment.
It's our official chronicler, so it's in the record now.
Yes.
Yes, but talk about the philosophies behind this filmmaking.
Yes. Okay, so this really blew my mind. So I've been an actor since, like the late 90s, okay? And in 2015, yes, 2015, I was referred to this acting coach in Hollywood, Anthony Gilardi, the Anthony Gilardi Acting Studio.
Get out of town.
Yes, and so I went, I met with him, I loved the studio, and I said, okay, I'm gonna come back. And what happened was, this was a year after my brother had passed away.
Trailer's back, okay.
Trailer.
I've been keeping an eye on Dylan lately. I saw him drawing in his notebook the other day.
You never got to know your dad. He was a hero.
I'm so sorry. He's using art as a way to cope. This is very common in young boys and girls when they experience a traumatic event. And art therapy can be very effective. It's like they create a world that makes more sense to them.
Home for good.
I wonder if you've seen what he's been drawing. Maybe the key to reaching him lives in that world.
So that's a trailer for Unvisible. So going back to my original story, how life sort of works. So I went to the studio, and then I think it was about a month later, I had an accident. I got mauled by a dog. And so I had this healing process. I had 50 stitches in my face. And so, the acting was on hold. And I didn't know for how long or if I was ever going to be able to do it again. Fast forward to 2018. I don't know what it was. It was like in February of that year, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back to that studio because I really liked it. And I was starting to feel a little bit better about, being on camera. And I go in and I meet with Anthony and, I sign up, whatever. And then he mentions, by the way, we have an organization, a nonprofit organization that kind of goes along with Anthony Gilardi Acting Studio. But Hippo Life is what it's called. They had started a Performing Arts for Military Veterans program. And they had, I think it was like their first or second week. He said, if you want to volunteer, you're more than welcome to. And I said, that is like right off my alley, And I thought, yeah, I'm going to volunteer. And so I went. And I met 2 7 veterans in that acting class. Do you know that the odds of going to an acting studio in Hollywood, there's so many, and then finding out that there's 2 7 veterans that are in the class? I thought, okay, my brother's trying to tell me something. It was my birthday. It was my birthday at that point in March. I was like, wow, Junior, you really, wow, this is amazing. So I feel like he sort of led me back to the studio, and then I got to do this program I volunteered, do this program with Hippo Life, and as a group, we all worked on this film. All of the actors, with the exception of I think 2 or 3 of us, are veterans in that film. Even the young man who plays my son, he's a veteran as well. And it was this sort of amazing experience where we all went through about, I think it was like 8 weeks of this program, and we all participated together, and we all had a say in our characters. And Anthony really creates this collaborative community and a safe space. Not just does he work with veterans, but he's working with people with disabilities right now. They're doing another program right now. And so Hippo Life is a really amazing organization where they do a lot of good for the community. So definitely check out hippolife.org. And Anthony directed the movie, but he's also my mentor, my friend, my coach, and someone here actually knows him, so I thought that was very cool. They're over there.
Could we move to the next slide, please? And then, so how has the momentum of veteran-based performance and storytelling and narrative moved forward? Like, how's that big ball of wonderfulness growing for you?
So if you...
Or can we talk about this briefly and then...
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I also speak Spanish, sometimes not very well. But I grew up speaking Spanish, and so my Spanish, even though it's a little bit broken, I still speak out. And so I have also had the privilege to be able to speak on veteran issues in Spanish and the media. And so this actually is a slide of a piece, an interview that it's translated. It says when veterans of war take their lives, and so I'm holding a picture of my brother there, and that was a La Opinión, which is a Spanish language newspaper. But I did want to touch upon that because Latinos are overrepresented in the armed services, and so we do need to also educate our communities, because the families need to know that when our family members come back from war, or even if you haven't been to war, once you're out of the military, like they need additional support. Now we don't need to be like, oh, here you go. No, we don't need to do that. You know, everyone wants to be treated like an adult, like, you know, there's no sort of like, oh, poor me thing going on. No, there isn't at all. But I think that families also need to understand that, like, talk to them, have conversations, dialogue. You can learn a lot from your family members. I've learned so much just from sitting and listening. And so I think that's really, really important. And so I have had a chance to speak in the Spanish community about this, which is also a huge taboo, right? So I'll just keep speaking out.
Oh yeah, what are the kind of cultural differences both between the press, the English press, and the Spanish press, and also those communities? Because you do have those barriers even within 2-7, right? I don't know if you want to call them barriers, but distinctions.
Yeah, well, we as a family, I remember talking to my youngest brother when I had heard about the first suicide, and at that point I think there had been several, but he was telling us that people weren't really talking about it. And so when we lost my brother, our family and our mom, you know, my siblings, my mom, we got together and we actually talked about it. We said, do we want to speak out about this and be vocal? What do you want to do, Mom? Like, what would you like to do? Because we can speak out, we can talk about it. And my mom was like, no, we want to talk about it. And so I really commend my mom. It was really hard on her. That was her baby. He was the baby of the family. But he was a man. Don't get me wrong, a badass man. But it was really hard on her, and so she decided that it was okay for us to, you know, advocate and talk about this. And what I have seen other families as well, some have more difficulty. Sometimes when it is a Latino family, depending on like a religious background, like for example, like for us in Catholicism, suicide is, you know, you just don't. And so beyond the judgment, beyond the, you know, the things that we usually see, we just plowed right through. We're like, okay, well, you're going to judge us, that's fine, but we're going to keep talking about it because we need to change this, because now he's gone. It's unacceptable. He should have been a doctor right now.
Next slide, please. All right, comic books, superheroes. What do you got?
Actually, this is a pilot that I co-wrote with a friend of mine and collaborator. He's an animator, and so we wrote an animated pilot called Maria in America, MIA, Maria in America, and it is about a young veteran, a Marine veteran who lost her leg, and how she transitions back into the civilian world and back into the traditional Latino family and the sort of things that she has to go through. And it's inspired by my brother and some of his experiences. He didn't lose a leg, but he had injuries that were invisible. He had TBI.
Can you describe TBI and how that affects, because it's not like a football concussion, it's something else. Can you briefly describe the?
So from what I understand it and from what I've learned, traumatic brain injury, TBI, we most don't actually know, like.
It's like a concussion from being too close to a mortar going off or things like that?
Yeah, the one, like for example, for my brother, it was an IED. So the IED exploded and he kind of flew off and, you know, slammed into a ditch, I think. He slammed into it. And, you know, the Marine that was in front of him lost his leg because he had been like 6 feet away from him or something like that. And so that caused him to get the TBI. But then you're constantly in like blasts. You're constantly getting, you know, like thrown or whatever. Like anytime your body hits something or your head hits something, something's gonna happen. And so with traumatic brain injury, because it's the brain, we don't know a lot about it. We have some knowledge, right? That, you know, the lesions that happen or the injuries to the inside that you never see until the brain is actually dissected. And so that right there needs to be more research. Now, there are a lot of organizations that are doing like the research, right? But we also need to understand more. And I believe that the VA needs to be more proactive. And instead of waiting for a veteran to say, hey, this is going on, why don't you provide the services and say, hey, this could potentially be something that's happening to you? Because the way I think about it is, if somebody has a brain injury and they're going through all of these difficult things, how are you expecting them to advocate for themselves within the VA system if they don't understand it themselves? These are brain injuries that we don't understand. And so how are you expecting somebody who's injured to say, hey, this is what's going on with me, help me fix it? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I feel like there needs to be much more education by the VA instead of this whole and don't get me wrong, they have done a lot of things to change the culture. So like that also needs to be celebrated, but they still need to do more. And you know, when my brother was in and he was going through that process, he had a good experience with one VA, and then when he moved to another area, and then that other VA, he didn't find the right resources that he needed. And so I think that, there's always more work to do. Within that system, with us as civilians taking more responsibility and really being more proactive, and contribute to these organizations, volunteer your time. If you can't donate, volunteer your time. Stand side by side with a vet who's doing a service, for example, I volunteered to help clean up the Foreign Legion in Hollywood, and so we're out there, you know, picking, you know, weeds out of the, you know, cleaning up the back, and we're all just sitting there, just doing the same thing and helping and just being there. Is something that I think most people should do it, because then you can take that, whatever preconceived notions you may have, let those go away, because it's not, you know, it's not reality. We have some amazing human beings that people are missing out on, you know? Yeah.
Like her, huh?
Yeah.
Should we go to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, next slide, please.
We are here today because of our loss.
First, a suicide, then veterans carrying on his mission.
We all know the horrors of war, you know? And a lot of the details Michael kept from us. I mean, he knew it would break our hearts, and he kept it inside, and he buried it there.
Former Navy Corpsman Michael McCarthy took his own life in his LA apartment in August, just as Taliban troops were rolling toward Kabul. The collapse of the country, just a matter of time.
And that's Michael and his troop. We're all still, I guess, in a little disbelief. I think he knew that they were going to take over Kabul well before they actually did. And I think that was too much for him.
Corpsman McCarthy had spoken with Newsy just weeks before, in the midst of a desperate and personal mission to rescue 2 interpreters he had worked with in Afghanistan.
Michael, I just started the recording. My name's Michael Shane McCarthy. I was a Navy U.S. hospital corpsman in Afghanistan in 2008.
Back in July, he was frustrated by the bureaucracy and confusion of how to get visas for the Afghans he was trying to help.
I personally put my hopes in the hands of God at this point.
Before he died at age 39, McCarthy got to see one former interpreter escape. Wolf, as the Marines called him, is now living illegally in Turkey, and he fears he could be deported by a government that doesn't want Afghan refugees.
The Turkish people called us out, Fight America. I don't know why. If you guys working with Americans, and now Americans leave Afghanistan, why you guys can't here?
The other interpreter McCarthy was trying to evacuate told me he couldn't get out.
We hope, we wish one day we can fly and escape from this hellish country.
We're using his military nickname for security. Danny and his family face Taliban beatings and chaotic crowds as they try to enter the airport in Kabul, with the militants now controlling the city. He hadn't heard from McCarthy in days, so he opened his phone, turned to Facebook, and saw a rest in peace message on his wall.
I asked from my friend, excuse me, what does it mean? What does it mean, rape? He said, rape it is mean rest in peace. It is mean that person you say in here, he is died. Oh my God, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. It was the bad and worst news in my life.
Suicide is all too familiar to the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, where McCarthy served.
My youngest brother, Elias Reyes Jr, served in 2-7. He did 3 deployments, 2 to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan, the last one being with Michael McCarthy. My brother, in 2014, took his life after having so many suicides from 2-7. It doesn't get easier. I think it's getting harder and harder.
Veterans of the 2-7 tell Newsy they had 6-hour firefights in Afghanistan and often ran out of ammunition with no air support or medevac. They didn't even have enough water. Calling themselves the Forgotten Battalion, they'd watch their comrades die there, and then at home. At least 37 have ended their own lives, according to a database kept by a veteran of the unit. Some, like McCarthy, also struggled with addiction and homelessness. We asked the Department of Veterans Affairs whether they track veteran suicide by military unit. They told us they don't request that information from the Defense Department.
We would have to have assurance that it was validly representative and reliably representative.
A 2015 New York Times report found the 2-7 had a suicide rate 14 times the average for Americans. Surviving veterans have made a practice of coming to each other's aid when yet another suicide occurs. But McCarthy's death is different. A group of veterans are coming together to finish what he nobly started.
Hey. I felt I owed it to him to see through to the end his final mission.
Former squad leader Dustin Batson had been working with McCarthy to try to get the interpreter Danny out of Afghanistan. Batson says he formed a bond with Danny on the day of a suicide bombing in 2008.
A suicide bomber had jumped on the hood of the Humvee and blew himself up in the middle of the bazaar. So all the Marines were fine, but it killed and maimed a whole bunch of civilians. And so Mike, being our corpsman, treated all the wounded. A lot of them were small kids, and it really affected him. He was never quite the same after that day.
Danny was by Michael McCarthy's side, not interpreting, but helping him treat the wounded. Danny later became a doctor because of that experience, and McCarthy paid for his medical schooling in India. Danny and his family only returned to Afghanistan so that his ailing mother could die in their homeland.
How are you from the United States here in Texas able to work on getting him out of Afghanistan?
And I don't know how much I want to say because it's like a security thing, but we have secured safe houses that are protected, and I say protected, disgustingly enough, we have to pay off the Taliban to just basically not mess with them.
So what needs to happen now for Danny to leave Afghanistan?
Permission from the State Department. That's it.
He's waiting for approval to put Danny and his family on a plane, with Doha agreeing to take them. But priority has been given to Americans and green card holders.
What if you don't get Danny out?
There is no contingency where we don't get him out. I'll go over there and get him out myself.
Batson says he owes it to Danny and to McCarthy's memory.
I'm going to end this now. I've got some of Michael's ashes. I'm not going to just sprinkle it on the beach here, but maybe later take a little walk down by the water. Anyone who wants to go with me at that time is more than welcome to, you know? And thank you again. Thank you so much.
So when this aired, actually, we got news that Dr. J, Danny, was able to fly out of Afghanistan, and they have been safe for a few months now. So that was a little bit of good news that, you know, him, his wife, and their kids were able to get out safely. And so we're just waiting for the different things that they have to go through with the State Department to, you know, have them come to the U.S. And then also, I just received a call from another 2-7 vet who is in contact with another interpreter that was able to get to the States and is now in San Diego. And so we're going to do a big welcome to him and his family. I think it's next week. And so we're going to be, a lot of us are coming in just to go in and support the family and welcome them and try to make them feel at home here in a completely different country, you know, and try to, so we're all trying to do as much as possible to not just take care of each other, but also right now with everything with Afghanistan, also help the interpreters, because our interpreters are veterans too. The thing is that, you know, they didn't get that sort of time off, right? That are, like, for example, like my brother would go for like 8 months and then come back, right? Whereas they're there all the time, and so they've seen so much. And so I consider them veterans as well. So that's why we're doing so much to try and, you know, help in those spaces, you know. And like I said, I'm not the only one. There's a whole network of people, of veterans, of people who are, you know, either former military or even active duty or in the government and different spaces that are trying to help in a non-official way, right? So this huge community of people just trying to help each other. This picture right here is sort of a behind the scenes. It's of a film called The Secret of Sinchani, and it's produced by veterans, but also I'm so grateful to my husband for helping to, he produced the film, and I'm so grateful to him that he has also been contributing so much to something that's something I'm very passionate about. And so that picture is with, some of you will probably recognize Rudy Reyes, and that's Mac right there to my right, and then you got Tim for the Veterans Project right next to him. And so that film actually, most of the cast were veterans, and there were also, wait a second, there were I think 10 veterans that were cast, like cast members, actors, and then there's me. I was also a part of it. And then one of the producers from that, also an actor for that, is Nate Boyer, who just recently premiered his directorial debut film called MVP, and it's based on the founding of Merging Vets and Players. And Nate included my brother Elias's story in the film. And really, it's a tribute to Second Battalion, 7th Marines, to 227. And so I hope, when the film comes out, I hope people will go out and support it. And
we
really
have a slide for the film, right?
I don't.
There's a thought slide.
Yeah, I don't think we have one for MVP. But once it comes out, I'll be like sharing about it. But we had a screening for it yesterday.
Oh, yeah, please tell us about that.
Yes, and that was another project that, again, I'm so grateful for my husband, because he helped them make magic. They is a low budget film. A lot of people that were a part of it literally made nothing. These are people that just donated their time. You have actually all of the veterans that were portrayed in the movie are veterans. And then you had people like Jay Glazer, who is in it. And everybody worked for scale. And I'm talking about not like the scale, I'm like the low budget scale, right? So they're basically donating their time to this film. Like Tony Gonzalez, let me see who else. There's so many people that, Michael Strahan, they donated their time to be in it, to be in this film that's really about veteran suicide prevention. And so I hope that, I hope that people will go and watch it. It was such a beautiful experience to be in this screening yesterday, where most of the people in the audience were vets. So to be in that space, to watch the film, to know that we're doing something to try and save more lives, it was just a really special experience. And I hope that, like I said, I hope when the film comes out, that people will watch it.
Yeah, let's do a screening here.
That would be awesome.
All right, it's on. Thank you, all the thanks, and your courage and just devotion are just awe-inspiring. I profoundly thank you for coming and the work you do and sharing.
I'm so grateful. You have no idea. Like, to be able to have this conversation with you and to share even just the work that other people are doing, because they need to be celebrated. They're working 24/7. I do other things. I act, I produce, but this, I will drop things for anything that has to do with our veterans, and something that will. I know that film has a wider reach. I know that media and art have more reach, and so whenever I can, I try to, hey, how can I help? How can I, how can I connect you? What can we do to make this happen and to save lives? And I really want to also just really highlight that 22 veterans a day take their lives, and in that 22, you have a lot of senior veterans. So check in on our senior veterans, please, because of all the reasons I said, they're amazing. Like, we cannot lose any more of our vets, regardless of their age, So, yeah.
Cool. We have time for one or two extremely quick questions from the audience, if there are any. If not, Margarita, thank you again, and our amazing Phoebe will guide us out. And,
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Everyone here, please join us in the back for coffee and cookies.
Yes, and I'll have links on my website to any of these organizations.
Cool.
I'll put those up tonight, and then if anybody wants to go check it out, it's margaritareyes.com. I'll have all those links up there. Thank you so much.